If you've ever read the work of Zen Gardner, you no doubt are familiar with his tireless dedication to what many of us call the awakening. His words are beyond powerful, they are heartfelt, and they are resonating at deep levels with so many who are hungering to understand who and what they really are at this time of great transition. Now, Zen has compiled those words, thoughts, and wisdom in his brand new book, simply titled, You Are the Awakening. We had Zen back to continue the discussion about all of the dimensions of awakening, its twists and turns, and most importantly, why now more than ever, it's time to shift from neutral into high gear. I know a man named Zen. He speaks his truth from within. His smile is bright. He has incredible insight. And his tenacity to awaken will not be shaken by any who question his might. This man I'm speaking of is none other than Zen Gardner, and he's back with us again to talk about the dynamics of awakening as he so eloquently expressed in his brand new book, You Are the Awakening. Now, for all you Zen Gardner fans out there, and I know there are many, this book is the ultimate feast for the aware and for those who are still hungering to wake up. So welcome back, Zen.
Thanks. What a beautiful little poem. That was very sweet. I love that.
It came naturally, you know. I have this thing for rhyming, and especially when it's something positive, and you are, so I had to do that.
Oh, cool.
How are you doing, my friend?
Really good. I've got a little poem I'm about to post. I'll read to you later.
Oh, good. Okay.
Same thing. I love rhyming, and I love the meter of words and
yes,
and weaving them together. But expressing obviously something that you're really sincerely feeling.
Absolutely. And you have, speaking of which, you really expressed yourself beautifully in, I'd like to say, your #1 new release. #1. Have you gone to Amazon? It's #1, dude, and for good reason. For good reason.
Yes, it's #1 in its category. It's doing really well. I'm very happy. I'm hoping people will use it as a handbook, because a lot of people have been writing me over the years, like, well, I got down today, or I was feeling a little confused. And they say I need a shot of Zen, and then they'd go to my timeline, which is this little clock icon on the website, and it's got the last 2-3 years of articles in chronological order. But I was really happy to hear that, because I write to inspire, I write to encourage, and I, like you, I'm very empathic, and I've had too many emails, too many conversations about people feeling isolated and misunderstood and running into difficulties in their marriage or with their children or at work, and how you reconcile this information.
Right.
Once you've got it, it rocks your world, and it should, and then you've got to learn to start letting go of stuff that you found out is part of the very thing that you've just learned about that is so destructive. So, and it's a process we're all going through together. That's the beauty of it. And and even if you can't physically be with other people, we can share the experience. We can have that sense of camaraderie. But the next level, which I talk about a lot, is getting together physically, and that's why I'm going out starting last year and this coming year. I have a lot of events I'll be going to meet people and speak and get out there. We've got some ideas to do some guerrilla events in possibly in Europe, trying to reach students in universities and just sort of moving about and getting it out there, get this awakening spreading, and really conversing with people. At the same time, you learn what's really going on in people's minds and hearts.
You sure do.
You know?
And that needs to happen. You're right. I've heard you make mention of this before, Zen, that, it's wonderful that we have this thing called the internet and connecting through the various social platforms. But there is nothing like the eye to eye, ear to ear, and heart to heart, and the physical presence of one another where we can connect at another level. I think both have to be in play. So you're absolutely right. Well, we're going to get into the specifics of this book, and there's a lot of meat to it. And like you said, and I think this is a quote of yours, don't look at this book book as a manual. Look at it rather as a reflection of what's really inside you. And you know, I have to say, I've noticed in my years of reaching for books to explain things, that at the deepest level, a lot of what I was reading and resonating with came from the fact that at some very visceral level, I already knew this. And this is what I think your book will really awaken in many people, a recognition or a recognition, right?
Yes, resonation is another good word.
Resonation.
It's when people, that's why I like to write and keep the articles current on what I'm going through, what I'm sensing in others, and you know, in the overall context, and take it apart in a way that sort of addresses the personal experience, and you know, trying to help people interpret it and understanding it. You know, not just to not feel alone, but to understand it. And that when you do, that's the thing about truth. When you hit on it, you know, it stands for itself, but it resonates. And when people get that heart resonation, that affirms the very core of our being that is trying to come alive, that wants to be free. And the more we can all resonate with that, as you well know, that this heart knowledge, this heart living, and get out of our heads and leave the programming behind, because it is that simple. If we leave our mind back and push it back to where it's supposed to be, as a servant, not as a leader, then we can have that type of camaraderie and co-understanding, and so that's why things resonate when somebody sees a certain video, maybe, or a certain combination of words. I mean, language is so powerful. So
it is. For
me, and I've always been fascinated by it. That's why, and I've always written and edited, but it didn't really blossom until my full-on awakening hit, and that's when I could just relax, be who I really was, say what I really thought, not for audience reaction, and not to support some ego system or something. Just let it out there, and that's when it started hitting the mark and having the effect.
Yeah, I can tell you tap into your heart as you're writing. You're a brilliant writer. Many of your fans know that. I have to ask you, did you write prior to this chapter, if you will, of this genre? Were you writing before that?
Yes, I've always liked poetry. I've been a non-professional singer-songwriter on and off, and I've worked as an editor in jobs I picked up while I traveled around the world for 25 years, and I've worked at news stations a little bit here and there. So just sort of, but I've always been fascinated by language. Always,
you and me both.
Playing with words, puns.
Yes.
You know, making fun of stuff, and it sets you free, because you realize, like George Carlin says, you know, language is perhaps the most one of the most profound tools of the controllers.
Yeah. So
therefore, for us, it's one of the most important keys to unlock, to set us free. So that's why there's a lot of beautiful research out, you know, on the roots of language, what words really mean, the different syllables, what they really stand for, what people are reflecting in the words they use and the expressions they use. It's remarkable. It's so eye-opening. We realize it's just you know, we're tapping into their nervous system when we use their language unwittingly, in an unaware sense. But when we wake up to it, it becomes a tool.
That's right.
And that's what's always been fascinating to me. So, but I've always had fun with it, and but now I can just relax and say what I really think. I'm not worried about censors or somebody coming down on my head about stuff. That rolls off my back, because, you know, that's their problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not mine.
Yeah. Getting back to this language thing, if you recall, I think our first conversation offline, about 3+ hours, we talked for a while about language. You and I share that. That passion of understanding the root of words and the multiple meanings when you really, dig in. So yeah, I think something that I've pondered for quite some time is, forgive me, I'm going to have to really work on shutting out these what's outside, the chemtrails. Yeah, they're prolific today. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. No, I didn't. Language and essentially, it's interesting. We think of words and the implications when you say a word your mind and body react in a certain way according to the word. But I also happen to think that the sound, as you mentioned,
Yes.
syllables and the sound and how that sound, which is essentially a frequency
Yes. Yes.
and a vibration that your body and all that's around you picks up. So if people really had an idea as to how heavy words can be, and empowering and disempowering, perhaps we would choose to use different words and or not say some of them at all.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. This language we're using now is almost like using an ancient computer with a black and white screen. It's very crude. English,
Yeah.
especially, and as you know, they've trimmed down the vocabulary. They've dumbed everybody down, and words have been twisted to have. They originally had different meanings, and there was more words with similar meanings, so you could speak more lucidly. But now it's been dumbed down and it's chopped up. So we're having to speak in these bits and bytes of very crude, what do you call it? Bits of information.
Yeah, that's right.
That could be conveyed. It's like a couple making love. I mean, what words can express all the things that happen when people are making love? Language would be foolish to try to explain that. So that a few words maybe could say it, or a spiritual experience. Ultimately, when you get down to it, of any of the great teachers, they'll say it is whatever this truth everybody's seeking or trying to manifest. It has no definition. It has no name. Words only limit it.
That's right. I agree with you.
So that very much is the same, even with concepts and trying to formulate what it is we're trying to convey. These are very old, primitive methods of communication that I think we're going to transcend from. Personally, I think the intuitive is moving in really fast. This heart connection, and it's something that I think we need to consciously make an effort to develop, because it is it's essential. It's happening on its own, but I think when we recognize it and learn to honor it and develop it in any way we can, often that's from just learning about silence and resonation and things like that. But we're moving into something much more profoundly meaningful, much deeper, much more effective. And so a lot of people's, you can pretty much guarantee everybody, their hearts are hungering for that type of communication.
I think you're right.
And when there's a lack of it, then subconsciously they're going, what's wrong? What's wrong? It's like a child being brought up in the world here, that the parents don't know how to parent it, and the real, true spiritual being that came to birth is neglected. It's abdicated. It's abandoned.
Yeah.
So we have to deal with abandonment issues the rest of our freaking lives, because and it's not all our parents' fault. They were raised that way. And
it's multi-generational. There's no question about that.
But that effect, that's very parallel to what we're talking about. The unaddressed real us within us, the real, call it the real child, the real spirit, is needs to come out and know that it's okay, it's loved, everything's all right. You can let the past go, the old experiences, the old programming. It doesn't need to be sorted out. It just needs to be understood that it was off. It was wrong, and now we can develop freely without fear. Which is why they do the whole fear program, obviously.
Right. Well, I want to get into that, but I want to stay on the intuitive and the heart a little bit more, because you actually weave a very powerful message in your book, Zen, and that's in the midst of the absolute insanity, something beautiful is happening too. We know that. Something unprecedented, and that is the awakening. And you even mentioned the sensations, physical, emotional, even psychic, that people are having as indicative of this shift. So I want you to, let's stay on this for a little bit if we could, particularly the psychic experiences people seem to be having more and more, and the telepathy. And this connects in with perhaps these things will eventually be, or language will be replaced by these sorts of things. So let's stay on that for a minute.
Yeah, it's one interesting thing that I'm just last few days, I think is a good example. Elle and myself and people I've been corresponding with. And they're in Brazil, England, Ecuador, Holland, Spain. Close friends that we can speak very, very clearly with each other in love and understanding. But we've all been feeling this strange sensation of being in limbo, and a difficulty in concentrating, and a sense of dizziness. And this is happening to a lot of people. It's not just right now, but the fact that we can share these kinds of intimate sensations and intuitive interpretations of what we're going through, heart to heart, that's a manifestation of that kind of communication. Or like, I can write certain people and say, are you sensing something strange right now?
Yes.
Are you? Is there something? It's not woo woo. It's not. It's just sincerely asking. Are you sensing something? And we're not talking. It can manifest physically, but more often than not, it's sort of intuitive and sort of along the empathic lines. And then all of a sudden, I'll see comments on the website, or I'll get a few emails, or I'll read something, and all these things build to confirm the presence of something you're sensing. And I often write from that perspective, because to me that is as profoundly real as anything. And then I'll take the geopolitical events as evidence, and this is often regarding the awakening. That look what's happening. Look at this news item, and look what this person just said, and look how this thing just fell apart. Some false flag thing, or look how this, and you'll see their contraptions collapsing, while at the same time, in many cases, or just sort of a sense of what's a good example? Right now, this is sort of limbo feeling. There's sort of a floating sensation. Now, there's other things involved, obviously, because there is a super duper electromagnetic warfare going on right now, and the chemtrails are part of it. And I realized the other day that the chemtrails put a canopy that not only hold the heat in, but and we noticed this the other day. I was saying, we were both feeling really strange, but before the chemtrails came in, the new blanket, we were okay. And I realized the EMFs that they're beaming around the place are bouncing back and forth. We're in like a Faraday cage kind of thing, where these things are being reinforced. So on a chemtrail day, or as the atmosphere gets more toxic, it's more these electromagnetic frequencies, which are on all kinds of bands now, get more intense, and they really mess with us. They mess with our nervous system, with our minds, with our the whole neural process that is part of our physical antenna. And for psychic people, this is tough. And as you know, they've weaponized this, and they actually target individuals now. And I have friends who know they've been targeted and can describe the symptoms. And sure enough, one good friend, Oli Domagard, he went to a conference in Germany just a few months ago, where it was all people who've been suffering from these personal attacks, and each of whom had been some kind of an activist or a government person who had got left the matrix, and they've been targeted, and they all describe the same symptoms.
Well,
and
I'm sorry to interject, but let's go over some of those symptoms for anyone that may be listening that feels that they have been targeted to some degree. Let's go over those again. What are you hearing in terms of the consensus of what the symptoms are?
Well, I'm no professional on this. I wish I had Oli's brain for a second, because he got a real earful. But I know, and people have to be careful, because they can get in a sort of a paranoid frame of mind, unduly paranoid, I should say, because paranoia is actually a good state of mind. But they shouldn't be fearful about it, and attach every symptom they've got to some kind of personalized attack.
Right.
That can really set you back on your heels and put you in a dark place. But they are capable of doing this. You can research it online. 20, 30 years ago, they could park cars around somebody's house and direct energy.
Oh, sure. I'm familiar with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's old. That's old technology. Now, they've got all kinds of other stuff. But the symptoms can be all kinds of things. Confusion is one of them. People get migraines. We have a friend in Holland who has already has compromised health issues, having worked as a pilot for many years, and the air was so toxic that his immune system broke down, which turned into a giant case that got headlines in Holland because it really exposed KLM for who they were, and it was all covered up. But
heart palpitations.
Yes, heart palpitations.
I've heard that. Yeah.
You can get skin irritations.
Yeah.
Any kind of a nervous condition can show up, but what really disturbs people is when they start to realize there's voices in their mind, their dreams are affected, and it often happens during the nighttime for some reason, and maybe that's when the frequency bands are free from the usual use and they can concentrate on it. I don't know,
right?
But it's something worth researching for people.
I think it is. Yeah.
It does. The number one thing people should always do is don't look in for the problem. Look for what the real source of it is. People tend to get down on themselves and look at their personal issues and, I did this wrong and that wrong, that's the beaten down religious mindset that, you are a sinner and you were born in sin and you're bad and something's wrong with you and therefore this is your problem. And that's a mindset that has to be snapped out of. It's really important to, when you feel that kind of internalization of issues like that, to look out. Look at your circumstances. Don't get all internalized to where it's me. Of course there are issues. We can't escape. We all have our dark side and things that, that's not all love and light. This is a very real battle we're in. Each of us have our dark sides of years of programming and all kinds of dumb things we've gotten into willingly and unwillingly. But if we look externally and realize the warfare we're in the midst of, it's like a soldier getting back in World War I. What they call it, battle fatigue. Oh, before that it was something else. It was shell shock.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was honest. Then it became battle fatigue. Then it was post traumatic stress disorder. They made it more scientific sounding till it didn't really relate anymore to the original issue, which was this poor guy put in a war zone, forced to kill people and see his friends killed and blow things up. If that doesn't disturb somebody, I'd be shocked.
That's right. They wouldn't be human. Well,
but we're in a warfare right now. We're in a very serious warfare. But you have to eat defensively. You've got to find healthy food. You've got to be selective. You can't trust anything out there. The labels, if it says organic, half the time or most of the time, baloney. You have to go to a small farm to believe it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Even the label, they put these long labels on things. Well, who knows what else is not on the label?
Right.
And who says what's on the label is true? I mean, where's Ralph Nader when you need him? He's still working, but you can't keep up with this crap because there's so few people, so few watchdogs, and those who do speak up get slapped down or just ignored. So each of us, their old slogan, as you know, is divide and conquer. So they've scattered humanity in these pockets of darkness where they have to fend for themselves, and we're scrambling for information, and it's a real fight. This is a very serious time of warfare, which is why I write a lot about the rise of the conscious warrior, because we have to rise to the occasion, shed the weights, let go of the stuff that can be attached to, which is unnecessary crap in our lives, physically, spiritually, psychically, and every other way, to where we don't have stuff that's going to pick up these Klingons that they're throwing at us, and we're as much the warrior of consciousness as we can be, and take a proactive stance, because if you're on the defensive, you've already defined the fact that you're going to be hit. We've got to be on the offensive. And it's like the age-old saying, either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. There really are no neutrals in this warfare. You can't stand around observing like these trolls on the internet, and people have nothing better to do than just to drag people around or distract people. It is a very serious time of either get on board or you're going to get taken out.
Yeah, and I do agree with you, Zen, but I would say that observation along with activation or action is equally important too, because I think one of the problems that we're dealing with is people are not observant. They're not aware. They're simply going through motions, which render them inert, really. So I would say that observation, or what I call awareness, contemplation, reflection, have to go hand in hand in order to, to be able to discern what's going on, because this, as you said, war on consciousness. And I want to stay on that for a little bit, because I think you're right. This is a very serious thing. It's been called lots of things: spiritual warfare, war on consciousness. That's been going on for perhaps thousands of years. So
that's their ultimate plan. I know a guy who was raised by an Illuminati family, and one day his mom, who's from one of these long bloodlines, and this is all provable, she said, well, the ultimate plan of ours is to control your consciousness. That it's to control your consciousness, which of course they're on a different wavelength. There's no way they can even comprehend what we're really about, but it shows that they understand our power and where it's coming from. So that's why you can see so many things on our nervous system, our minds, our education, diverting religions, phony belief systems, fake hope, anything to divert our energy so we do not get that concentrated understanding, that focused grasp on the power of our conscious awareness. But I want to say something about what you just said about how people are not, they're not getting it, because what's happening now is that people are going to be forced to face these things.
Agreed.
The props are getting kicked out. And as I say, if that's what it takes for people to wake up, so be it.
So be it. Yeah.
It's sad, and in America in particular, because they've been so bombarded, so drugged down, and so mind-controlled so heavily for so long, we have a very schizoid populace there.
Sure do. And dysfunctional. Just dysfunctional.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's worse. It's psychotic.
Yeah.
It's beyond cognitive dissonance at this point,
right.
in my opinion.
I agree.
It's become really serious. And so what's going to happen in the societal breakdown is people's behavior is going to become more and more erratic, and I talk about this a lot. Even be careful driving. You don't know what you're dealing with out there. And people are getting hit with all this stuff without any conscious awareness of it, and just playing along with it and going with the fear program and looking for terrorists and all this absolute BS. We're going to see a real, a massive schism, which we already are. But even those people are, in a way, it's like a universe working. This is a transition. It's a huge grinding of the mill. Of the corn, of the wheat. It's a massive grinding, and everybody's in it. None of us escapes. This life is what it is. And we're here in physical bodies. Obviously spiritual beings, but we are here, and we have to deal with it. But people are being ground into a new situation. Unwillingly, that's a pretty rough thing. But when you want it and you see it coming, it's not that bad.
Right.
It actually becomes like riding a wave or surfing a cataract. And it was a river, now it's a cataract. We are getting whipped downstream. We're hitting boulders and running around stuff. But if you're aware of it and what you're in and everything's under control ultimately, then you're not worried about it. It's like people trying to fight the undertow in the ocean. If you do that, you're going to drown.
That's right. Yeah.
But if you just relax, and that takes some faith, that takes some trust. You got to relax, let it take you out to sea, and just relax. Don't worry about sharks or this is your only option, and it's the smart way to go. You relax, and it's going to take you down the beach. But you know what? They're going to arrive at a different beach, in a different location, and that's what's going to happen to humanity.
Yeah.
And those of us who are like, hey, new adventure. All I had was a backpack on the beach. I really don't need much. Or but other people, my storage unit, my my reputation, my money in the bank that they've been trying to take.
Yeah.
And that's where this detachment and all that stuff comes in.
Yeah. Well, you bring up you go through this so again eloquently and so forthright in the book. There's something that came to mind as I was reading your book, and I call it the 3 C's. There's a relax or a comfort, a confidence, but also courage. You need all these three three things to be in balance, I think. Comfort, not in a sense of complacency, but don't get all, torn up about it. Don't try to fight the toe. Just relax into it and do it with confidence. But you also have to have courage, because this can be a lonely journey, very lonely.
Yeah, and courage is not the absence of fear. It's the conquest of fear. We all get afraid. I mean,
Sure.
we all have, there's nobody who can escape. It's in our reptilian brain, fight or flight. Something's coming to take your life or the life of your loved ones. You have to, act, or a tsunami is coming, or an earthquake happened, or what have you. These are natural responses, but they're controllable with consciousness. But courage is, to me, it's a decision. I think the most important quality, as I've been seeing it lately, to get through all this, is determination, because people are going to hit obstacles and changes in their lives and challenges they never dreamt possible. And when they hit, they're not going to be sure they can overcome them, no matter how aware and awake they think they are.
Yeah.
And this is just the way it is, and it's part of our growth. It's part of our letting go. But I'm going through major changes in my life. It happens, and when it does, if you're determined, you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And if you can take it with some guts and just the knowledge that ultimately everything's under control, not in a complacent way, but to know that, okay, look, I've got my sights set. I'm committed to truth, so I have nothing to fear. Mm-hmm. I'm committed to do whatever it takes. I have nothing to fear. Now, people who are not committed are perhaps not going to have that clear of a passage through those kinds of things. It could be more difficult. But the only reason for me that I'm going through bigger changes and obstacles and things like that, and I can pass through them rather quickly, is because most of my life I spent doing the wrong thing. I've been through stupid things and held on to bitterness and anger, resentment. When the universe was showing me a big change in my life and I didn't like it, I got mad and I got resentful, and I would carry it with me. Deep subconscious stuff, all interwoven with my upbringing in my childhood and whatever the issues. But having gone through that, I can look back and go, that was a wrong decision. I should have just let go. That was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I couldn't see it for 3 years. Mm-hmm. What an idiot. So when the next thing comes, that's the next earthquake in your life, you can look back and go, that was the wrong response. I should have trusted. I'm going to do it this time. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to trust. I'm going to see the best in this, and knowing you're on course, and you get through it really quickly. And that's one unique thing about what's going on with humanity now. I think people are passing through things very quickly compared to what they used to have to go through in previous decades. It could even be centuries.
You mean psychologically? Do you mean psychologically? Yeah. Okay.
Personal development. Mm-hmm. Because it's happening. It's happening with couples. It's happening with relationships of all types. Very intimate, personal understandings, career changes, having to leave friends behind, or fundamental challenge, but also facing our own demons, facing who we really going, love and light, and emphasize the good, and the rest just goes away. No, you've got to face it. It's part of the program. Mm-hmm. But don't be afraid of it. And it's these things arise. So
I think we lost you, Zen. We'll be right back, everyone. Okay, everyone, we're back. I have to say this would not be an authentic Zen Gardner call if we didn't get disconnected at least once. This is when we know Zen's getting real deep, and you got to laugh. You got to let it roll off your back, right? Isn't this part and parcel of the awakening? Not getting pissed off about these things?
Yeah. If we don't have a sense of humor, we're lost.
Absolutely.
It's one of the most important things to have, and it's a symptom too when you realize the foolishness of it all and how idiotic these jerkwads are that are trying to do what they're doing. I mean, and think about it. They've got to keep replenishing the chemtrails continually. Why? Because Mother Earth will gobble them up.
That's true.
They have to keep have to keep reseeding the GMO plants. Why? Because they're unnatural. They have to keep re-fluoridating the water. They have to keep all the poisoning going. Why? Because all they are is imitators.
Yeah.
They're counterfeits.
Well, I want to get into that. You talk about that. Let me just say something. You are not shy about describing in explicit detail these architects of the matrix. Among other things, you call them usurpers in every sense of the word. And I quote, when I was chatting with our mutual colleague, who I know you know, John Rappaport, I referred to them as the goo makers, these self-proclaimed designers of consensus reality, whomever they are. The thing is, but this is the thing. When those who are awakened realize that this is a very plastic and bendable reality, at that moment, they can change the pieces on the chessboard. And the usurpers just become bad actors in a bad play that you can fire at any time, because when you awaken, you become the director, right?
Exactly. And that it's a fraud. I mean, it's a very real fraud. Like Einstein said, reality is an illusion, although a very persistent one.
Yeah.
It's here, but I mean, if it was Einstein, who knows who was putting words in whose mouth back then?
Right.
But yes, it is. It's a moldable reality. It's like John talks about. I mean, he's brilliant about imagination. This is ours for the taking. It's ours for the molding. It's ours, like you said, for the bending. And no, it is not the spoon that bends. Everybody, but
that's right. I love that.
Yeah, but it's ours for the taking, really. This reality is ours for the creating. And it might sound absurd when you look at the physical around us and all that, but as we discover who we truly are, we're going to see this manifest. And I contend that this has already happened, because things could be a lot worse. They would have taken this thing over a long time ago if they could have, but they can't, because we are too awake, and we're too mobile, we're too proactive, and we're too alive. It's said that the long-term planners, the dark goo you're talking about, or I mean, one of the best words for them is parasites. They're imitators and all that, but they work very slowly. They actually quite brilliantly in terms of how we view things, because they planned this thing not just for centuries but millennia. And this is the culmination. And we are alive here for the culmination, and we are here for a purpose, a really exciting one. And to really to bend that reality that they're trying to impose by, manifesting the true one. But they work slow. They work long term. And if you even look at the faces of some of these really sick entities, such as the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Kissingers, the Brzezinskis, you look at their faces, and they're dullards. There's no life in them. They even look like that they're slow. They talk slow. They're old. They're decrepit. They don't look capable of very much at all. So clearly, whatever role they have, and I don't think they're the main players. I think it's whatever controls beyond that and beyond that. There's layers of stuff. But it's a long, slow thing. They don't have the get up and go or the ability to take the initiative and move quickly like we do. So our on this playing field, our greatest are we still together?
We're still here. I'm just listening intently.
last time it dropped off, I was going, hello. Anyway, we have the initiative. We have this playing field is ours for the taking. They cannot move quick enough to counter whatever it is, whatever initiative we want to take. That's why guerrillas during the so-called all these manufactured wars, they could hold whole armies at bay, and this goes right throughout history because they had the mobility, they had the attacking initiative, they could think clearly on their feet. They weren't carrying a whole bunch of equipment. They could move around. They could call the shots and hold them at bay, just like a smart warrior in the jungle who knows how to deal with big cats or a whole passel of whatever kind of predator animals. If you know what you're doing, obviously there's a time not to be there. Of course, that's one of the best things. Is like I said in one article, when your back's against the wall, don't be there. But it's you shouldn't have stayed home if you knew they were coming to knock on your door. In other words, that was part of what the article was addressing.
Yeah.
But we have that advantage, and that's extremely empowering, and it's really the truth. But what they're trying to do is give us the impression that we're like them. Move slowly. So we're waiting for societal change. Mm-hmm. When the mass media covers it, this is an approved change. It's people are waiting for the signal from something that is so slow, so vibrationally slow as well, but it is so off the mark, so old, so dead. There's no energy to it, yet people are being taught to behave along those lines, thinking that change has to happen slowly.
I have to interject something. That's an interesting point, and I agree with you. And yet, I think there is this bit of a paradox as well. I think the bigger picture that you're describing, they're moving slow and wanting us to mimic that is alive and well. But also, isn't it interesting that these same goo makers, we'll call them, are pushing for quick fixes all the time, push technology, quick this, so
yeah, that's true.
No wonder that the psychosis is in full play, because the brain is getting both messages, don't you think?
No, you're right. That's very true. Because you look at technology. I mean, their whole thing is scientism. This worship and adoration of science, and the technocracy that they want to put in place, and along with that comes, artificial intelligence and all this mimicry.
Yep, I want to get into that. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, but it's you're right. They also do try to push too fast sometimes, and then humanity pushes back, and they have to retreat a step, like David Icke calls it, the totalitarian two-step.
Tiptoe. Yeah.
Yeah, tiptoe. That's right. And these are real things, but overall, if you look at the slow progression, how things have happened, just from let's say from the founding of the Bavarian Illuminati in the 1700s, what they've gone through to bring about revolutions, and I mean they've got to deal with their own infighting and all kinds of stuff. They're not by any means so super coordinated and all on the same page as everybody tends to give them credit for.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Let's stay on this technology thing for a minute. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Finish up your thought.
No, I did. Go ahead.
Okay. The technology, to me, I think is such a marked a way of really seeing what's going on. So this is what I want to run by you. You are well familiar with this term called smart. We've got smart everything: smartphones, smart television, smart appliances, smart meters. This has been foisted on the public like white on rice. And something just occurred to me. I think there's a very disturbing sort of underpinning to this idea, and maybe a little less obvious to some, that we can now rely on something outside of ourselves as smart. And the implication is that we no longer need to be smart. So they're asking us to allow technology to become sort of a proxy intelligence for humanity. What are your thoughts on that?
That's brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. It's, again, giving over power to hierarchy, to authority.
That's not even human. It's really...
No, but think of the McDonald's eaters now eating chocolate-covered French fries.
Oh,
it's
Are you kidding? No, wait a minute. Stop. Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
Is that happening here? See, I don't do McDonald's, thank goodness. Wow.
They're adding chocolate syrup and white chocolate syrup on top of the French fry.
No.
It's marketing, after all. People want it. So let's clog them up good. It's a slow kill, as you know, and it's absolute insanity. But Americans, unfortunately, will eat it up, be unaware. But
you said something I have to bring up. I think all of these things are intertwined and related. But this was interesting. You said we have a fascination. Now I say we, meaning obviously not you and me, but generally speaking, people have a fascination with evil. A fascination with evil. Where does this come from? And if this is some sort of a lower primal aspect of mankind, wouldn't you say that they, again, whoever they are, have leveraged this aspect of ourselves to do what it is they do?
Again, very well said. They have leveraged it. That's for sure. They take advantage of any primal instinct they can. They've got scientists. They've got it's a whole industry to study human psychology and how they can manipulate us. Since B.F. Skinner and and I mean from way back, it's always been there. But
Evil.
yeah,
Fascination with evil.
yeah. But well, I've been talking about that a lot because I think people ascribing so much power and almost adoration to these dark powers that shouldn't be are making a big mistake because it's a form of worship. It is a form of adoration. It is an acknowledging of power and a form of giving power to something that you fear, and it's a subtle form of fear because it's this thing you're talking about. So it's a worshipful type of fear. Yes, you are so powerful, and we are just little alternative people who are trying to figure this out. And it's not all to that extreme. Obviously, there's a whole spectrum of degrees of this, but it's a tendency because when people get overwhelmed by power, they've been brought up in hierarchy. The local mayor can take their house away. The president can rule you can't have a gun. I mean, they're living in a world that is controlled by others. I mean, you talk about a smart meter. All these entrainment mechanisms are already in place. So they're taught to not be sovereign, not manifest their natural responses, natural intuition, and to receive from outside messages from controlling influences, entities, figures of all sorts. So, these things, it's natural for people to fall into it, but when it gets into this whole thing of, well, look what happens on the other side where it looks like it's all candy and lollipops on the climate change and the UN and all that, and people appealing to these NGOs for, oh, please, even the American Indians are making a big mistake, some of those groups, in my opinion. They're going there to try to get the UN to pass things for them and this and that, as if those agencies could give one you-know-what for those people. But they're looking for this global power structure imprimatur. They want this to be approved, and therefore it's going to happen. And we have to give up on that. The structure is designed to destroy and contain. Obviously, they back down a little bit, like we were just saying, and then enforce more. But ultimately, these are not the people to appeal to. Why should we have to appeal to anybody for basic rights?
That's right.
I mean, the rights already exist. Who took them away? I mean, who says that they're theirs to grant? You have the right to do this. I mean, everything's based on a negative from the day you're born. It's so ass backwards that it's hard to fully grasp as people wake up. It is a gigantic revelation in our lives. But then you have to start to apply it. Well, then locally, okay, the guy next door is using glyphosate on his crops. It's poisoning us. Go talk to him. If he won't listen, maybe you need to appeal to an authority, but hopefully he'll listen, which I've heard happen right here in Uruguay. Somebody was spraying his field. The neighbor said, "Hey, what are you doing? Do you know what that stuff is?" Explained it to him. He stopped.
Great. Because you don't see that all the time.
Simple.
You don't see that all the time. That's
no,
great.
you don't. But
yeah.
but often people don't go to the farmer; they go to the local authority.
That's right. Yeah.
So there you have it. We're back into hierarchy, and then you got to appeal, and you got to change the law. You got to go to the town council, and maybe they'll grant you a meeting, or maybe they'll let you speak for 3 minutes and not cut you off, and they'll arrogantly sit on some big dais. And I've been to these things. They just the way they sit there. It's like a judge, and this whole trip of how they set themselves up as authorities to arrogantly oppress just by their presence and by the formulation of the venue. It's not to empower. It's like the United Nations. Oh, come to us. We have great big oak leaves around our globe. We shall take care of you.
Right.
It's preposterous. But to wake up to the dimensions of that, I think it requires dropping out, getting out, just divorcing yourself from the whole thing. Right. Then it doesn't have any power on you. And then you work, like I was saying, like your fundamental truth gorilla. You can move about, you can get the truth out here, and you look for openings. And when you find the opening, you rush into it.
Yeah. I believe when you look for the openings.
So many are doing.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, I believe that when you look for the openings, it will also look for you.
Yeah, exactly right. The teacher will show up.
Yeah. I
but
agree.
but we have to do the stepping. It's like, Harrison Ford or Indiana Jones stepping over that great divide to go find the golden chalice or whatever it was in that movie. The bridge didn't appear till he stepped out, and then he realized, I don't know if you remember that scene, but he realized, when he stepped, it manifested because he had the faith and the trust to follow the instructions, and he had the drive to fulfill his mission. And boom, it was a stone bridge that was sort of disguised or whatever, but for him, he could have fallen straight down the canyon. That's what steps of faith are like. They take some guts and courage, like you were saying earlier.
That's right. Here we go again. Yeah.
Yeah, but look, I asked people, what do you have to lose? I mean, your life? Aren't you going to die anyway? And what are you going to die for? What are you living for? And what are your grandkids going to grow up into? What are your kids going to grow up into? What's going to happen to the children of the world? Are you going to watch Palestine get completely bulldozed into the ocean? Are we just going to stand by and watch, Syria get decimated, and then the next country and the next country? What do we, how can we live with ourselves not taking a stand in at least some way?
Right.
And then eventually it'll get heart, and you're going to want to do it in every way possible.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking. This is why, folks, I opened up this interview with my poem. He has might, and it will not be shaken by any who question him. I mean that, Zen, because look, here's the sad truth. As much as I am optimistic about those that we maybe overuse this word, awakening or becoming acutely aware by the day, there are still way too many that, as you present these scenarios, would say, well, what am I going to do about it? And I have to tell you, there's still sadly, a lot of people that are having that reaction of just still complacency, or just, they're just giving up before they even get started. So let me ask you, what do you think, this is just a little question, what on earth, or maybe not on earth, is it going to take for those types of people to say, okay, I'm doing an about face? What's it going to take?
Wow. What's interesting is when you track you look at many of the very powerful activists who are manifesting this change with real drive and real compassion. Many of them were touched personally. You look at moms who've lost their child to vaccinations, or moms whose children became autistic, or somebody who had a near-death experience, or Jill Bolte Taylor. I'm sure you've seen her story where she had this massive, what's it called?
Aneurysm? Was it
like an aneurysm?
Yeah.
Well, she had a stroke, and it shut down her whole left brain. And she was a brain...
Yes, I do know that story.
And she's an advanced brain scientist, and she articulates what happened and her awakening to consciousness. It is amazing. What does she do now? That's all she talks about.
That's all she talks.
That's all these people who've had these experiences talk about. Right. When it's a personal experience, it becomes real. Now, I haven't had any kind of I mean, I've had several stages of awakening, and what's driven me since my first awakening, way back in when I first got out of suburbia in New York and into university, and I woke up, I just had to find the truth. That's all I knew, which should be taught to every child. The number one, who are you, why are you here, and where are we? Does anybody talk about that? No. You're given rote information stuffed down your head like a meat grinder, and those things you have to hopefully wake up to try to find out for yourself. Or most people sublimate it and stuff it somewhere, or they join a religion who hands them the answer, and they can just that gets taken care of 1 hour a week. That's easy breezy. Put some money in the dish, and I'm good to go, and I'll go to heaven and all this stuff. But it's I lost my train of thought right there. But,
pick it up where you.
I was driving at something, and I just made a left turn. But what'd you say?
Just for the audience, just so you know, Zen has some backup. Can I mention? Can I mention her name on air? The love of his life, Gail.
Yeah.
She's always standing by in case he loses his train of thought. Gail, what was he talking about?
Okay, she's.
I have to confess, I was in the other room.
She's watering the plants right now. I must be boring
Well,
her.
you know what? We're actually we're actually winding down. I'm tempted to go a little bit over, but I don't think we can. So you know what? Let's jump to people have now woken up. In fact, you have a chapter in your book that says, "So you've woken up. Now what?" Well, now
Yeah.
what? Now what, Zen?
There's a video of the same title, and people should look it up on YouTube. It'll blow your mind. It's done by a dear friend in South Africa, and actually, it's been used by a friend of mine in all of his presentations, and it's quite powerful. It's an excerpt from it, but really, well, I've got a dear friend, Kim Kamala Ekman. She just finished a book called "So What Can I Do," and I recommend people go look at that and pick that up as well if they can. I happen to be in the book because I'm dear friends with her and her husband Ole. But it's got Ken O'Keefe and David Icke and Cynthia McKinney and Sophia Smallstorm, Ole.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the reason for the book was to address Kim's family members about this whole awakening process, and what it is what are these people trying to say. So she gave us several questions to answer, and we all answered the same questions. Very fundamental questions, but it's very helpful for people to hear sort of a very basic approach as to what the awakening is. My book, again, also does the same thing. The first section's called The Awakening, and in that section, So You've Woken Up, Now What? That article is in there, and I think people will find it quite empowering. The second section's called Navigating Our Changing World, which is things you're going to run into after you've woken up. Mm-hmm. You start to realize some of these more unsavory realities around us, which are very disturbing. As you know, you've got mind control and satanic pedophilia and all kinds of strange things, never mind the geopolitical baloney and how we've been raised and the control paradigm of the Matrix. The third section is called Language, Beliefs, and Other Hazards. And
I'm sure that's great. I touched on that, but I'm sure that is phenomenal. That's huge to me. Here we go.
Yeah.
The language. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, very important. And other hazards. I published an article today of a guy who realized he thought he was channeling, but he realized he was being mind controlled. And his name's Greg Giles. And he was a very, very popular channeler. And this is something I've cautioned people about. Be sure of your source, because there's all kinds of things going around. And I addressed that in that section and a whole lot of other stuff. And the last one's called Take Action, the last section. And that's how to turn this into something that is going to be practical for not just yourself, your family, your loved ones, but the world around you. What can you do? And this is obviously profoundly important because most of us feel very powerless. Why? It's been constructed that way. Mm-hmm. There aren't ways to manifest. You can go down to the town hall, or you can picket in the street and run into police. Wow, thanks so much. Can I write an article to the newspaper? Yeah, but they won't publish it. The avenues have been shut down, so people just sit home and watch the boob tube. It's really pathetic right now. Mm-hmm. But there are avenues. That's why I'm part of the Full Circle Project.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask how that was going.
It's going good, and there's over 15,000 people now connecting from all over the world. There's something called the Community Connector people can sign up to, and you'll find people in your own area that have similar interests. It's safe, it's secure, it's something. It's an initiative. That I'm behind anything like that. The same thing with Ken O'Keefe's beautiful initiative, worldcitizen.solutions, and that's the website. And he's come up with an initiative that it's another way where you can disconnect from government, stop supporting governments that are supporting war. Put your money where your mouth is, or don't put your money where you don't want your mouth to be, and manifest consciously, and have some nuts, some gonads in your life to actually take action against what you say you're against.
Right.
This is where humanity needs to start to pull their shorts up. Let's do it. Well, what do you have to lose? I mean, nothing. Actually, everything if you don't.
Right. Everything if you don't.
So it's closing in so fast. It's an urgent situation, and people are afraid to realize that because of the personal consequences. Well, it's time to get over it. shut down, give away your storage unit, get rid of the junk in your life. I always touch on the physical stuff because that seems to get people riled, but it's that simple. But, get out of the big banks, do what you should be doing. Start a little at a time.
I was just going to say that's so important, and I have to interject. I think people get overwhelmed at, oh my God, if I'm going to really take action, it's got to be all at once. No, it doesn't. It's baby steps. Just do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing that bugs me, I talk about this almost every show, is this glorification of these great giants of change like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and these icons. Well, they've been glorified and iconized for a reason, so nobody even tries to get there. They think they're so special and so different. Screw that. They're just like you and me. Mm-hmm. They were born in situations, and all they did was have a freaking conscience. They responded to that conscience, like the word responsibility. It's the ability to respond.
That's right.
So, and we need to activate it. And boy, I tell you what, anybody listening, when you do the personal inspiration, the personal inflowing of happiness and a sense of satisfaction that you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing in your life, doesn't compare with anything you've ever experienced. No physical security, no emotional love, no nothing. It surpasses everything because it is what we're here for. And when you find your calling, you'll know, and even if you're just getting little pieces of it, keep going. Just keep going.
I love
it. Just keep going, And then what is an army made of? A whole lot of individuals, and it won't take many. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if one person here on this planet wakes up to what the hell's going on, that's enough. Their cover's blown. But you know what? There's millions of us. We get it. We're catching on, and it's spreading like wildfire. Mm-hmm. This is having a massive effect. And if people would realize their effect, not just socially and geopolitically and all those things, but in the morphic field, what happens when people wake up and create good, harmonious waves to neutralize their waves of destruction and confusion? I mean, the effects are so enormous because people are withdrawing from the matrix vibration and they're contributing to the truth vibration. That is huge. And as you get more intuitive and learn about this kind of stuff, you'll sense it. And when you start to see it, you go, wow, this is powerful. People need to know about it.
Right.
And what do? You got to tell everybody else. And that's the job of all of us.
Love it. Well, you know what? I'm going to have to let that be the last word. This is powerful. And everyone, he was on a roll. He's and will continue to be. Listen, you got to get, you are the awakening. You are the awakening. Zen, you're the awakening. I'm the awakening. We are it. So thank you so much for this absolutely integral contribution to our community. And
it's like Jeff Renz told me. He said he put in one of the reviews to the book, he said, if you aren't the awakening, who is?
Who the heck is? I love it. Leave it to Jeff. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, Zen, where can people find this book today?
They go to my website, zengardner.com, and you'll see a banner at the top. Click on it. It'll take you to the reviews and a link to Amazon.
Some beautiful reviews, by the way. Beautiful reviews.
Yeah, mind-blowing.
We all know. Absolutely. That's
great. I'm blown away.
Excellent.
And then you can go. You'll get a synopsis on Amazon. It has a short summary and what the book addresses, and get it for everybody you can. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not out to do this to make money. Believe me, if I was into making money, I wouldn't be doing this. but I want to see this distributed to everybody possible. And
we're going to do everything we can on our end. Yeah,
I appreciate that so much, Alexis. Yeah. I really do.
Well, Zen, as always, what can I say? You are the awakening, dude. You're necessary. We love you. Thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, thanks, Alexis. Big hugs and kisses to you and Derek, and so appreciate all you do.
Back at you. Love you. You Are the Awakening is a calling to consciousness, a sobering yet powerful treatise that beckons each and every one of us to finally come out of the cocoon of complacency and into our authentic selves. This is about the true sovereign journey, and as Zen so eloquently said, this is about the rise of the conscious warrior. If you enjoyed this interview, I know you will enjoy his book, so I urge you to check it out, read some of the amazing reviews on his website, zengardner.com, and then pick up a copy for yourself. We'll have a link below where you can get the book. You can also listen to my first interview with Zen, conducted in the latter part of 2015. For all of us at Conscious Life News and Higher Journeys, I thank you for tuning in to Higher Journeys Radio. I'm your host, Alexis Brooks.